And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your honor host, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to welcome tonight award-winning author Deshaun Charles Winslow, here to give us the inside scoop on his brand new book out tomorrow, Decent People. Deshaun, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about these people.
Hi. Um, Decent People is a book about a lady named Jo who has just returned to the fictional town of West Mills, North Carolina, to marry her longtime childhood friend and fiance, Limp Seymour. But on a day that she arrives back to West Mills from visiting her brother in the north, she learns that his three half siblings have been shot to death and they've been found in their home. And Limp is the town's prime suspect. The the authorities don't really care. They're just pretending to investigate the case. But Joe feels deeply that Limp could not have committed this murder, and so she is out to exonerate him. But as she begins her own little investigation, she starts to find all these dark little secrets about people in town, and it calls a lot into question. Is Limp guilty? Is he innocent? But she's going to find out because she loves him and she wants to make sure that she's marrying the right man.
Yes, she does want to make sure she's marrying the right man because this is not Joe's first marriage, and she does
Right.
not want to make another mistake. Hashtag relatable. She's trying to make good choices there. And we're going to get the scoop on Joe and all the characters. We're going to talk about Limp. We're going to talk about Eunice. We're going to talk about West Mills. We're going to talk about triple homicide, small town secrets, all the good dirt. First, I
Yes.
just want to welcome everyone who is watching with us. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, wherever you're watching from, you're in the right place. This is the right time. It is Mystery Monday. And because Mondays can be murder, we're going to make them a little less painful for you. So if you've been here before, you know how it works. And if you're new, we're so happy you're here. Here's how it works. Every Monday, I give you my handpicked featured authors, and you get to ask them anything. So ask Deshaun about his writing process, about West Mills, this town, this fictional town in North Carolina that he has written about a time or two. Ask him about small town secrets. We got a lot to talk about. Just get the questions going in the comments. Arlene Cogdell, welcome to the conversation. So thrilled to see you here. Arlene is, of course, the incredible reviewer for the Sun Sentinel, Florida, Shelf Awareness, Publishers Weekly, all the things. She says she is really looking forward to this. Arlene, a pleasure to have you, ma'am. Carrie, welcome to the conversation, saying, can't wait to read this. Yay. Carrie, tell us what you're excited about. So while y'all are thinking of your questions, let's jump right into it. So Joe drives 10 hours down from New York City back to her hometown and finds her sweetheart and childhood friend Limp accused the prime suspect of this triple homicide. And it's not just any triple homicide, it is his three half siblings with an estranged father who he doesn't call dad. He calls by his full name, Jesse Earl. Now,
Hmm.
I loved that creative choice because when we have a character calling their father by his full name, it says so much. Tell us why you did that, Deshaun. Did it come to you right away? Like, this is not a man who would call his father dad or, father or papa or whatever. Like, he's going to call him Jesse Earl. Why did you do that?
Yeah. I think that comes from, so I grew up in a family where a lot of people out, my mom, for example, she was not raised her whole life by her mom. She was raised primarily by her grandmother. And so she and her siblings called their mother by her name, you know? Um, and I know I grew up with people who were raised by their grandmothers and stuff, and they called their parents by their name, you know. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why I made that decision. But you're right; it points out a difference in the relationship. Almost, especially if a person was raised by a grandparent, in those cases, it's almost like their parent is their older sibling. Um, but I
Mm.
also notice it to be the case when someone had a father who was outside of the home, who they didn't see very often, but he was a part of their life. A lot of times they called him by his name because there was not that normal father-child bond. And most of the time the fathers accepted it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, thank you for sharing that backstory into that creative choice. Julie, welcome to the conversation. She says, I thought the characters were amazing. I didn't read the first book and now I'm regretting it. Julie, there's always time to go back and get Deshawn's backlist. Tell us what you loved about these characters. Deshawn, let's talk about these characters. So we kick off with Jo. So first we're seeing the world through her perspective. Then we go over to Eunice. Then we go over to Savannah. So we have some different. Let's start there. Let's start with why did you choose the characters that you choose to be the voices of your book? And were you like, I will have this many protagonists and they will speak this way, or were you like, nope, I need another one. No, I need another one. Too many, less. Like, tell us how that went.
Yeah, there were more, not many more. There was one more who I decided to cut. She was going to be a love interest to Lazarus, actually. Yeah, and there,
That Laz is the half brother of Limp, who is one of the
correct,
triple homicide victims.
right, yes. But I decided to cut her from the novel because I think I may use her for something else. But yeah, there were more suspects, and some of them dropped off, and some of them changed out, and But I wanted each POV character to be pretty unique. So we have, Jo, of course. She's a 60-year-old woman who has lived in New York, and has lived in a progressive space, and decides to come back to
Mm,
the South for a quieter life. But when she gets there, not only is there this murder stuff, but she also has to get used to living in a community where everyone knows everything about each other, and that nothing is really a secret.
mm,
So that's her. Eunice, we have in her, mid to late 30s, a well-to-do lady, business owner, married with a son. She is somewhat of a pillar of the community, or viewed that way. And she's really caught up in her image. She's really caught up in her image, which means she's caught up in the image that her husband and son project. And neither of them always make her happy. And then we have Savannah, who is a white lady from the east side, which is the white side of town. Savannah has been married to a black man, which definitely sets her apart in this community. She too moved to the north to get married with her black husband. They had children. He dies unexpectedly, which brings her back. Financial reasons brings her back to town. Um, and she had a close relationship with one of the deceased, one of the murder victims. And then finally, there's Savannah's father, a well-off white man on the east side of the canal, who also had a business relationship with the Harmons. Um, and he's a typical Southern guy with money. He likes power, but he hasn't always had power. His power is somewhat inherited, um, twice, from his
mm,
father and then from his older brother. So
mm,
he doesn't feel that he has made a real mark of his own, and
mm.
he has an opportunity to do that by making what he believes is a good decision. But that's in jeopardy. So those
Mm.
are the four people there.
And Savannah, I think she's on the way to the funeral. I think is when she muses that her father. I highlighted this passage that her father is not exactly a Klansman, but isn't exactly inviting Black folks over for dinner either. So she
Right.
finds herself as, he's the landlord of the murdered sister's medical practice,
Yeah.
murdered half sister's medical practice. She finds herself in an interesting situation of living on the Black side of town, going to a funeral of 3 murdered siblings. She's I think I felt her to be the only white parishioner in attendance, and
Yes.
she's feeling that othered, that
Hmm.
sense of being othered,
Hmm.
which I thought was very powerful, and feeling vulnerable in that, like feeling the suspicious gaze of people. Who's this woman? What's she doing here?
Right.
Much to talk about. Aline saying no such thing as an idyllic small town. Absolutely, absolutely.
Hmm.
Now, Deshaun, when you, okay, I have a question for you, but first I want to get over to Carrie's question. Oh, and then I'm getting over to you, readers got to read. Carrie wants to know, in West Mills was beautifully written, and there's no question decent people will offer more of the same, most importantly, compelling characters.
Thank you, Carrie.
Carrie, thank you for the beautiful comment. Readers got to read. She wants to know, how are the siblings alike? How are they different if it's not a spoiler? Give us the scoop on these siblings.
Yeah, let's see. Um, well, they are different in that Marion is more driven. Marion is the doctor. She is a little more driven than her two younger siblings, and they are quite codependent. They show some independence, but they really, because she is their older sister, and they have been raised to believe your older sister is smarter than you. Your older sister makes the right decisions. You two don't. They have sort of been trained to believe that, and they follow her like kittens following their mother, and so that's how they differ. Now, the way the three of them differ from their half brother, who's been accused of killing them, is that they have education. They were raised in a two-parent privileged home, um, and with money, and he grew up in a home with a single mother on in a less fortunate, less fortunate area of the West Side. So there's that socioeconomic difference. Yeah.
Yeah, because another way that we see, so we have Limp raised by a single mother, struggling a little more,
Hmm.
seeing Jesse Earl, their shared father, very rarely. He says he saw him less than 5 times until his father took ill, and then his half siblings, hired him to take care of the property. We
Right.
see the 3 siblings who are now found murdered, their bodies, sitting around for 2 days in the very large house that neighbors were wont to say was too big, too fancy for
Hmm.
a Black family to live in, that didn't also work in.
Right.
Having that level of privilege, having people, to take care of the grounds, having the access to college, Marion going on medical school, becoming the only Black doctor in 100 miles, Marva working also, as a nurse, and then Laz working as their driver slash bodyguard slash assorted other roles.
Hmm.
So we're seeing the juxtaposition of haves and have-nots within the family, based on what the father was able to provide, these 2 very different halves of his family.
Yeah.
Um, Deshaun, are you the oldest? Are you an oldest child?
I am my mother's oldest child, but I'm my father's number 7, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so as your mother's oldest child, you know that us oldest children, I mean, we are the smartest and the best. I mean, the little ones should follow us.
What are
Am
you
I
gonna
right?
do?
We can't help it that we're the best. I mean, come on now. I want to get over to some of this amazing praise. Readers, going to thank you for that great question. I want to
Yes,
get over to some
thank
of this
you.
amazing praise that your book has earned. Let's kick off with BookPage, which has awarded you a starred review, and I'm going to pop it up here so we can all read it together. They say, anyone who adored Charmaine Wilkerson's Black Cake and Dolen Perkins-Valdez's Take My Hand, take note. Deshaun Charles Winslow invites readers on a satisfying ride that, through his keen observations of human nature, leads to deeper considerations of the glacial progress in racial equality. Starred review there. Now, Deshaun, when you set out to write this book, were you like, let me write a book about the deeper considerations of the glacial progress of racial equality, or did that just come out as a by the way?
It was, I did intend to write a little bit I wanted to deal with, racial strife, social justice a little bit. But I mostly wanted to focus on a, a town of people with different types of problems and how those issues could, your neighbor's issue finds its way into your home by some strange way. The book was not intended originally. I had no intentions of writing a murder mystery. The Harmons were going to die accidentally, and so there were no suspects, but these people who we meet, eunice savannah Eunice, Savannah, and Ted, they were still going to be affected because they still had these relationships, for better or worse, with the Harmons, and they were going to be reacting, very dramatically to these deaths. But
Mm.
I ended up writing a mystery because I just sort of lost my way, and frankly, I got bored with the story. And I was like, if I'm bored, I'm afraid my reader is going to be bored. And I want to do something a little bit different this time, like I want to plot.
So then you just started killing people off.
I started
And
killing
then
them.
you just killed them all. Okay. Okay. Now, Deshaun, when you at one point, I think it's Joe who says to Nate, and it really sort of, I think Joe says to Nate, but it's early on in the book when she says something like, "Well, I don't really care what my neighbors think about me," and he
Hmm.
says, "Well, Miss Joe, you've been living up north for too long, because here in West Mills we have only 1,000 people, and we actually really care what our neighbors and other folks think about us."
Right.
And it was I highlighted that as well because it was such, for me, a small moment, but a powerful, poignant moment about what it's like to live in a small town versus to live in a big city. And Joe muses internally that in New York, she didn't, in Harlem, she didn't know any of her neighbors. But back
Right.
in West Mills, she knows the people across the way and 3 doors down and 2 doors down. Like, she knows everything there. And I
Hmm.
loved that moment of the juxtaposition and the diametric opposite of how involved you are in people's lives. Now,
Yeah.
you lived in big cities, you lived in smaller cities.
Hmm.
Tell us about the creation of that moment.
Yeah. I think what I wanted to point out there is that in a small town, your reputation matters. It can
Yes.
make or break you. You
Mm.
know, if you are suspected of having robbed the gas station, whether it's proven or not, you will have a hard time getting a job. In that small town. Um, and so reputations matter. It really matters in a small community if a person likes you or not, because word travels and people are clicky and stuff. But there is such a freedom to living in a big city. You could be a drug lord in your apartment, and your and your neighbors might not know until the day
That's
you get
true.
busted.
That's so true.
Right.
So true. I love that. I want to get over to some. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have more to say on that?
No, no.
Okay, I want to get over to this review from Book List. I'm going to pop it up again so that we can all share it together. Saying Winslow offers several points of view in this character-driven mystery, once again pulling readers in with conversational, highly readable writing while deftly weaving in themes of race, sexuality, and small town dynamics. Another winner.
Mm,
Congratulations on that
yeah.
amazing on that amazing praise. Let's talk about the highly readable writing. Do you read it aloud to yourself? Do you know how do you make it feel supple and
I
readable?
I should read aloud more because then I would have less copy editing to do, at the end. But I don't. I sort of hear my characters, not audibly, of course, but mentally I hear my characters. When I write out a line, I don't. I hear a person say it, and I'm often using a voice of a person I know to help me
Ooh,
write those lines. And so
ooh.
that really helps me. As a matter of fact, when I write a line and on the rare occasion that I whisper it aloud and read it aloud, it sounds weird because I'm hearing my voice. But
Ooh.
mentally, if I'm imagining it being an uncle's voice or an aunt's voice, I'm like,
Mhm.
yep, that's perfect. You know?
I that actually is a perfect lead in because I wanted to ask you, Joe, a 65-year-old woman, Eunice, not exactly sure how old Eunice is, old enough to have
Late
a
30s.
late 30, old enough to have a
Mhm.
young boy, a young son, Leroy. Um, Savannah, a white woman, and Savannah's dad. None of these people are you. So let's talk about those voices. First of all, talking about writing a female point of view. What was that like for you? Did it feel hard to get inside of a woman's POV for her, how'd you do it?
Yeah. Strangely, or maybe it's not so strange, but I write from a woman's point of view with more ease than I do a man's. And I think that comes from having been raised predominantly by women. You
Mm,
know, I
mm,
have my mother has 6 sisters, and the ladies in my community helped my parents raise me. And I spent a lot of time with women. I spent a lot of time with my girl cousins and my girlfriends on the street, on the road.
mm,
And, and I just learned, I listened to what women are interested in, what
mm.
upsets them. And I just sort of learned. It's like lifelong research. But being queer as a kid, I had spent very little time around boys my age, and definitely didn't spend time around men my age. And in fact, most of them sort of politely excused me to go be
Mm,
with the girls, because
mm,
I was obviously I was effeminate in a way that made people uncomfortable.
mm.
Yeah. So anyway, I write women with more comfort than I do men, and I think that's just plain old familiarity.
I love that. Well, first of all, I wish more men were like you and truly listened to women. I mean, what a beautiful thing that is to truly listen.
Hmm.
And I think myself, I have always spent more time with women and am much more comfortable writing women. And writing from a female point of view. And I love to hear that you are too, and that you're honoring your mother, your aunties, your cousins, your grandmother, all of these wise women in your life
Yeah.
that you've been listening to and learning from and tuning into. And what a beautiful way to honor them. I love that. I love that. And your female characters are so different. Joe, on the way to her third marriage
Right.
and fifth relationship, never wanted kids, doesn't want them, doesn't miss them. Eunice wants nothing more than to be this mother, but only the mother of a certain kind of mother, of a
Hmm.
certain kind of, family.
Right.
Savannah, I mean, they're so disparate and so
Yeah.
fascinating. So I love that. Sophie Ann, welcome to the conversation. She says, right, and totally agreed. In big cities, we are like invisible people. Ooh,
Hmm.
invisible. I like the use of that word.
Hmm. Invisible in a good way. Like we can, you know,
Ooh.
in a place like New York, Chicago. I never lived in Chicago, I visited, but places like that, you can be when you want to be visible. There's plenty of places to go and plenty of spaces to be like, here I am, look at me.
Here I
But
am.
yeah, but when you want anonymity and privacy, all you have to do is just go home, and no one next door cares what
Mm.
you're doing, in most cases at least. And so,
Mm.
yeah, invisible in a good way.
Do you
Hmm.
think there's downsides to that invisibility as well, Deshaun?
Yeah, I would say so. I remember a couple of times in New York there were when there were things going on in my building that I felt like somebody needed help. And
Mm.
the country boy in me would say to the neighbor who was also peeping their head out the door, should we do this? Should we go there? Maybe two of us
Mm.
can stop it. And they're like, no, 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 no. At the most, call the police, but don't go in, don't go over there, don't help, don't get involved, you know.
Mm.
And so those moments, those moments can be rough when it becomes when you want to be visible to help somebody else, but it might be safer to just back inside and call someone else to come and deal with it.
It's so
Yeah.
interesting you should bring that up because my next book is a true crime and it takes place in New York City. And
Mhm.
after the woman is murdered, one of her neighbors says, I heard something and I didn't go up because it wasn't the first time I'd heard something. And I didn't know. We're not friends. We don't hang
Right.
out socially. We just pass each other on the stairwell or in the lobby. And I didn't want to intrude. And it's
Mhm.
such an interesting dynamic of when you live with neighbors. That I live in an apartment. I have neighbors. I don't really know them. And it's such a I don't know them at all.
Yeah.
And it's such an interesting dynamic of when do you say something, when do you not say something? Of course, it's in the news this week that some guy on Cape Cod just killed his wife and mother of his three children, hacked her up with a hacksaw and
Oh
disposed of her
gosh.
body. How many people didn't interfere? Why do we not? Why are we so afraid of the cost of being polite? It
Right.
just, I don't know. It's very interesting. It's
It
very
is.
interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Y'all, the book is out tomorrow and you can get your copy tonight. So support our favorite woman-owned store. I'm going to post the link right here. Grab your copy tonight, y'all. And you too can immerse your self in the world of decent people. And West Mills, here's the copy. Here's the link, excuse me. Whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, here it is. Click and order. The good folks at Murder by the Book in Houston, Texas will send it out to you tomorrow. And you two can chat about the Harmons, about Miss Joe, about the limp, all the things in this triple homicide of this small town in North Carolina. You're not going to want to miss this one. Meanwhile, Deshaun, I want to get we have just 3 minutes left, but I want to get to some of this other praise really quickly. Library Journal. I want to make sure I get to this one. I'm going to pop it up again for us all to read together. I'm just scrolling through and make sure I find it. Okay, here it is. It's built around a mystery, but this novel is more a deep literary exploration of the complex dynamics of race, class, and homophobia in the 1970s American South. It proves a worthy successor to Winslow's acclaimed In West Mills. Deshaun, why did you set this in the 70s?
It's it's mostly logistics. So in West Mills, which readers don't have to read in West Mills to read Decent People. They are only connected because some characters reappear and the setting. But I set it in the 70s because Leroy, when I decided that Leroy would be center to this plot, I had to do the math to get him to be 14 years old.
Oh,
And yeah, and so that's why I chose the 70s. Yeah.
okay. Because I think you were answering that because I wasn't sure if you were looking for a more, just coming out of, dropping the segregation laws
Hmm.
or a more charged homophobic situation. I wasn't sure. So this is so good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Publishers Weekly says that Winslow chronicles the aftermath of a triple homicide that rocks a segregated Southern community in his dynamic latest. There are a trove of surprises along the way to a well-earned resolution, and Winslow entrances readers with strong characters, impeccable prose, and brisk pacing. As a character-driven mystery, it delivers the goods. I think that's my favorite review ever. First of all,
I
congratulations.
love it. Thank
You're a
you.
teacher, you're a writer. What can you tell us is the secret to entrancing readers?
Hmm.
Entrance
I,
us.
yeah, I'll try. You know what? I'll say for myself as a reader, I want I want the characters to be very, very memorable,
Mm,
and I like to read prose that doesn't require me to consult the dictionary very often.
yes.
You know, um, and so I think, and so I bring that to my own writing. I want people to just read and get swept away, to get it to be entranced without having to say, I'll look that word up later, or I'll look that word up now. But yeah, characters being memorable and prose being smooth and accessible. That's my secret. I think it's a lot of writers' secret. you know.
I love that. I hosted Lorenzo Carcaterra, who's a screenwriter. He wrote Sleepers with Julia Roberts and
Mm.
oh my gosh, I can't think of the blonde. I'm totally blanking. My brain is very foggy right now, but he wrote the screenplay Sleepers. He also writes mysteries. And I said to him, who do you write for? And he said, I write for people who read the New York Daily News. I don't write for people who read the New York Times. I don't know anybody who reads that. He's like, I write for
I like
the
that.
everyday man. And I like that.
Me too. Me too.
So you're just writing for the everyday person.
For the everyday person, I just recently told someone a couple days ago, I'm not a writer's writer. I know that writers, we all read each other's work, but I write for the person who walks in a bookstore, excuse me, and they pick up a book, they read the synopsis, and they said, "Oh, that's my thing." That's who I write for primarily.
Mm.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because you won a rather prestigious writing
I
award,
know it's weird, right?
Deshaun.
Which
So,
which makes it even more surprising.
mm, so you're saying you write for the everyday person, but yet you've won this very literary fancy award. Um, Tell us, but you're not letting that sway you. You're going to stick to the.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of people out say, but you went to an MFA. And I was like, well, yeah, because when I went into the MFA, I was coming off the heels of an MA program and I was in a
Okay.
very academic, mindset.
Mm,
But when I began writing, like a full length project, I realized that that sort of writing style did not work for me,
ooh,
and that my readers would probably be people that most of my readers, my fantasy reader, I should say, would
yeah.
be like the people that I grew up with in small
Mm.
town North Carolina. And so my styles switched almost immediately. And so that's why within West Mills, I never would have imagined that anyone would have considered it literary at all. Never would have imagined.
But
Yeah.
here you are. I
And
love
here
that.
I am.
I admire that your humility and your hubris, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Linda, welcome to the conversation. She says this book sounds so good. I'm adding it to my TBR. That's my to be read. Thank you
Thank
for this chat. I love hearing about your inspirations. Deshaun, is there anything else? I see we're actually overtime.
you.
Is there anything you wish I'd asked? Anything you want to share with us? Any parting thoughts?
No, no, I love the questions. I love this was such a good time. I'm ready to order your book, your your forthcoming book. But thank you
You're
so much
very
for having me, and thanks to everyone who logged in to hear us tonight. I appreciate it.
Oh, well, Deshaun, it is so lovely to host you. Congratulations on all of these amazing reviews, starred reviews, praise after praise being lauded upon you. What a pleasure to see someone rise and thrive like you. And,
Thank you.
I just realized we booked, I booked this interview. I heard about this book months ago. I reached out to Deshaun's publicist at Bloomsbury and said, I've got to host him. I need him. And we booked this, probably 6 months ago. And I always host interviews the night before the book comes out. And I didn't even realize that today was Martin Luther King Day. But what a beautiful, meant to be divine coincidence that on this day that we honor this man whose
Yeah.
legacy is to fight for social justice and racial equality, that we are talking with you about this book, which is focusing the center of this mystery on racial equality and social justice. It's just so
Yeah.
perfect. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Thank you.
Aline says, good discussion. Thank you both. Aline, always a pleasure and an honor to have you in the audience. Aline will be coming on at the end of the month to share her best picks for the new year. You won't want to miss that. Carrie saying, congrats on your success. I so enjoyed the discussion. Carrie, thanks for popping on. Always a pleasure to have you pop up. Y'all, thanks for joining us. That is a wrap on this Mystery Monday. Don't forget, the book is out tomorrow. It's not even out yet. Deshaun is coming on to give us the inside scoop. So grab your copy now. Here's the link again. Immerse yourself in the world of decent people. And I will see you next Monday for #Mystery Monday, because Mondays can be murder. Have a great night, y'all.
Bye-bye.